I'm Sophia Mitchell, 34, standing alone on the balcony of my $6 million ocean villa in Malibu. The sunset paints the sky in shades of orange and pink, a view that should feel perfect. My housewarming party starts in an hour, but my parents' words still echo in my mind. We don't need to see how you waste your money while family struggles. After years of rejection, I did something different this time. I invited everyone else. As cars begin pulling into the driveway, I take a deep breath and put on my best smile, hiding the wound that's never quite healed. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to create your own definition of family. The ocean waves are crashing below, and I'm about to show you how I turned heartbreak into the ultimate comeback. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago wasn't terrible, but it wasn't particularly warm either. Our modest two-story house on Maple Street looked like every other on the block: neat lawn, two-car garage, and a kitchen where my mother Diane made dinner every night at 6. My father Robert worked long hours at his construction business, coming home with sawdust in his hair and perpetual worry lines across his forehead. Money was tight but manageable, at least that's what they told Thomas, my younger brother. For as long as I can remember, Thomas was the golden child. 3 years younger than me, he had my father's charming smile and athletic build. When he was 8, Dad built him a treehouse in our backyard. When I asked for one at his age, Dad said I was too old for such childish things. It was the first time I recognized the pattern, but certainly not the last. In elementary school, I brought home straight A's. My report cards were met with brief nods, and, "That's what we expect from you, Sophia." When Thomas brought home C's and an occasional B, my parents celebrated with ice cream and praised his improvement. By middle school, I stopped showing my parents my perfect grades altogether. "Thomas just needs more encouragement," my mother would say whenever I questioned the obvious favoritism. "You're naturally gifted. He has to work harder." The irony was that Thomas rarely worked hard at anything. He quit basketball, soccer, and the school band all within months of starting. I played violin for 8 years, made first chair, but my parents attended only one recital. It was the same day as Thomas's baseball game, and they left halfway through my solo. High school brought even clearer divisions. I was accepted into a prestigious summer program at Northwestern University, a rare opportunity for a sophomore. The acceptance letter came with a partial scholarship, but I needed $2,000 to cover the rest. "We just don't have extra money for that right now," my father said, not looking up from his newspaper. 2 weeks later, he spent $3,000 on new baseball equipment for Thomas. The day I was supposed to receive my Academic Achievement Award, my parents were at Thomas's baseball game. I sat alone in the auditorium as other students' families cheered and took photos. My name echoed through the speakers, and a few teachers gave me sympathetic smiles as I walked across the stage. Principal Harris shook my hand and whispered, "Your parents should be proud." They might have been if they'd bothered to show up. That summer, I met Rachel Kim at the local library. She was studying for the SATs while I researched scholarships. We bonded over our mutual love of finance books and plans to escape our hometown. Unlike my parents, Rachel noticed things about me: my organizational skills, my quick mind for numbers, how I could predict market trends from just reading financial reports. She became the first person to truly see me. "Your parents are idiots," she said bluntly one day after witnessing my mother brush off my acceptance to the National Honor Society to fuss over Thomas's C+ in English. "You're going to be successful, and they're going to regret not paying attention." College applications came senior year, and I was accepted to Columbia with a partial scholarship. My parents' response? "New York is expensive. Are you sure you want to burden us with that?" Meanwhile, Thomas barely graduated and decided to take a year off before college, which turned into 3 years of living at home, working part-time at a local sporting goods store, and draining my parents' savings on a failed attempt to start a lawn care business. When I left for Columbia, I worked 3 jobs: library assistant, campus tour guide, and weekend cashier at a grocery store. I sent money home occasionally, knowing my father's business was struggling. My mother, who worked as an accountant for a small firm, would call only when they needed extra cash for family emergencies. Those emergencies always seemed to coincide with Thomas's needs: car repairs, deposit for an apartment he'd eventually get evicted from, or startup costs for his next doomed venture. By my junior year, I stopped sending money home. I was drowning in student loans while my parents continued to fund Thomas's third attempt at community college. "He just needs to find his passion," my mother explained when I questioned their choices. "You've always known what you wanted." What I wanted was a family that valued me. What I got was a crash course in self-reliance. After graduating summa cum laude from Columbia with my finance degree, I landed an entry-level position at Meridian Capital, a prestigious investment firm in Manhattan. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the opportunity was golden. While my peers spent weekends at Hampton's beach houses, I worked overtime analyzing market trends and identifying untapped investment opportunities. "You have a gift for this," James Harrison, my 50-something supervisor, told me after I correctly predicted a market shift that saved one of our major clients millions. James became the mentor I never had, encouraging but demanding, supportive without coddling. Under his guidance, I learned to trust my instincts and refine my analytical skills. Within 18 months, I was promoted to junior executive, the fastest advancement in the company's history. My salary doubled, and for the first time, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I sent a check home for $5,000 along with a note. "To help with Dad's business. Love, Sophia." My mother called, actually thanking me, and for a brief moment, I felt valued. That spring, I identified a promising tech startup called Neuratech developing revolutionary AI software. After thorough research, I was convinced it would be a solid investment opportunity before their IPO. The company was still under the radar, valued at just $20 per share, but my analysis suggested it could triple within a year. During a rare visit home for Thanksgiving, I mentioned it to my father. "Dad, I've been tracking this company called Neuratech. Their neural interface technology is going to revolutionize medical imaging. The stock is undervalued right now, but it won't stay that way for long. If you have any savings, this could be a great opportunity." He barely looked up from carving the turkey. "Sophia, not everyone has money to gamble on Wall Street fantasies. Some of us live in the real world." Thomas snickered from across the table. My mother changed the subject to Thomas's new job at the local recreation center, his 5th job that year. I dropped the subject and flew back to New York the next morning, earlier than planned. 2 weeks later, I invested my own modest savings in Neuratech. 3 months after that, I received a text from Thomas. "Thanks for the hot tip, sis. Dad and I made a killing on that neural company." Confused, I called my mother. After some prodding, she revealed that Thomas had convinced my father to invest $50,000, nearly all their savings, in Neuratech after overhearing my advice. The stock had indeed tripled, netting them over $200,000. My father had given Thomas credit for the investment idea and rewarded him with $50,000 to start yet another business venture. "Your brother has such a good head for business," my mother gushed. "He convinced your father to take a chance, and it really paid off." I sat in stunned silence, then managed to ask, "Did Dad mention that I recommended that stock at Thanksgiving?" "Oh, did you? Well, you know how it is. Thomas really did his research and presented it so well to your father. He's really maturing." The betrayal stung worse than any previous slight. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd stolen my idea, given credit to Thomas, and rewarded him for it. That night, I made 2 decisions. I would never share financial advice with my family again, and I would succeed so spectacularly that they couldn't ignore me. At work, I channeled my hurt into ambition. I stayed later, worked harder, and took on the accounts no one wanted. James noticed my increased drive and assigned me to larger clients. My investment strategies consistently outperformed market averages, earning me a reputation as someone with unusual market intuition. "Whatever's driving you, harness it, but don't let it consume you," James advised one night after everyone else had left the office. I recognize that hunger just makes sure you're running towards something, not just away from something else. His words hit home, but I wasn't ready to listen. Success became my only focus, the validation I couldn't get from family, I would extract from the world. The next time my parents saw me, I wouldn't be the daughter they overlooked. I'd be impossible to ignore. By 28, I had ascended to Senior Investment Director at Meridian Capital. My office on the 42nd floor overlooked Central Park, and my client list included tech billionaires and old money families. The scared girl from Chicago had transformed into a confident woman who wore power suits and made decisions that affected millions of dollars daily. At a networking event in the spring, I met Michael Reynolds, a charming real estate developer with mischievous eyes and ambitions that matched my own. Our first date lasted until sunrise. Cocktails at a rooftop bar, followed by pre-dawn coffee at a 24-hour diner where we swapped stories about our rise through respective industries. Most women are intimidated by my success, he said, stirring his coffee. You're the first one who seems completely unfazed. That's because I'm not looking at you as a success metric, I replied. I'm measuring myself against where I want to be, not against anyone else. For 6 months, Michael and I were inseparable, flying to Miami for weekend getaways, attending charity galas, and planning ambitious investments together. He understood my drive in a way no one else had. But slowly, patterns emerged that felt hauntingly familiar. When I closed a major deal, Michael would counter with stories of his bigger achievements. When I shared ideas, he'd rework them slightly and present them as his own. When I expressed frustration about my family, he'd minimize my feelings. At least your parents are still together. You should be grateful. The final straw came when he invited me to dinner with his parents and introduced me as a financial advisor rather than senior investment director. In that moment, I saw my future constantly diminished to make someone else feel bigger. I ended the relationship that night. You're making a mistake, Michael said, as I gathered my things from his apartment. We're good together. No, we're successful together, I corrected him. But I don't want to spend my life competing with my partner. I've already done that with my family. The breakup crystallized something important. My worth wasn't tied to anyone's validation, romantic or familial. I decided to channel my energy entirely into building something of my own. For years, I'd been developing an investment strategy focused on sustainable technology and women-led businesses, sectors traditional finance often overlooked. My research showed these companies frequently outperformed market expectations when given proper capital support. James thought it was too niche, but I was convinced. After months of preparation, I resigned from Meridian Capital and launched Mitchell Innovations, my own investment consulting firm. The early days were brutal. Potential clients questioned my experience. Male competitors spread rumors about how I'd slept my way to my prior position, and several major investors pulled out at the last minute. Lily Chen, my former assistant who left Meridian to join me, became my rock during this period. Petite with a razor-sharp mind, Lily worked 18-hour days alongside me, believing in my vision when everyone else doubted. They underestimate you, she said one night as we pored over spreadsheets at 2 a.m. That's their mistake, not yours. 6 months in, we were running out of capital and hope when Diana Rodriguez, CEO of a mid-sized tech company, took a chance on us. She'd been rejected by 5 major investment firms before finding Mitchell Innovations. They didn't understand my vision, she explained. You do. Under my guidance, her company secured proper funding and expanded operations. 3 months later, their valuation increased by 60%. Word spread about the Mitchell method, and suddenly, my calendar was filled with meeting requests from companies traditional finance had overlooked. By the end of our first year, Mitchell Innovations had facilitated over $50 million in investments for 15 companies, with a success rate that outperformed industry standards. Financial magazines began running profiles on me, the woman changing Wall Street, finance's new visionary. I framed the first magazine cover and sent it to James with a thank you note for his mentorship. With success came financial freedom. I purchased my first luxury apartment in Manhattan, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a private terrace. The day I signed the papers, I felt a childish urge to share the news with my parents. After years of minimal contact, I called them and invited them to see my new place. To my surprise, they accepted. The following weekend, they arrived in New York, looking older and smaller than I remembered. My father whistled as the elevator opened directly into my apartment. "This must have cost a fortune," he said, running his hand along the marble countertop. "I've done well," I replied simply. The initial pleasantries soon gave way to their true purpose. Thomas's latest business, a food truck, was failing. They had remortgaged their house to help him and were now facing potential foreclosure. They needed $200,000. "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," my mother said, squeezing my father's hand. "Family helps family. Like you helped me with college?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "That was different," my father bristled. "You always had options." "Thomas struggles." "Maybe he struggles because you never let him fail," I suggested. The visit ended abruptly after that exchange. I did transfer $50,000 to help with their mortgage, not for them, but because I couldn't bear the thought of losing my childhood home, however complicated my feelings toward it were. I made it clear the money was for the house only, not for Thomas's food truck. As they left, my mother paused at the door. "You've changed, Sophia." "Yes," I agreed, "I have." What I didn't tell them was that I was just getting started. 3 months after my parents' visit to New York, I received a call that my grandmother, Eleanor, my father's mother, had passed away. We hadn't been exceptionally close, but unlike my parents, Grandma Eleanor had always shown genuine interest in my life and accomplishments. On my 10th birthday, when my parents gave me a practical gift of school clothes, Grandma Eleanor slipped me a book about famous women investors with a $100 bill tucked inside and a note. "For your future empire, my brilliant girl." It was the first time anyone had recognized my fascination with finance as something valuable rather than odd. Throughout college, she'd send occasional cards with small checks. For books or fun, your choice, and during my early career, she'd call to ask detailed questions about my work. "I don't understand all this investment talk," she'd admit, "but I understand ambition and brains. You've got both in spades." The funeral was held in Chicago, and I flew in from New York, expecting a brief, somber visit. What I didn't expect was to be named the primary beneficiary in her will. To my granddaughter, Sophia Mitchell, I leave my house, its contents, my jewelry collection, and the sum of $500,000, the attorney read, while my family sat in stunned silence. My father's face reddened. Thomas slouched further in his chair. My mother placed a restraining hand on my father's arm. "There must be some mistake," my father said after the reading. "Mom always said the inheritance would be split equally." "There's no mistake, Mr. Mitchell," the attorney replied, adjusting his glasses. "Your mother amended her will 2 years ago. Everything was done properly." The reception after the funeral was tense. Relatives I barely knew approached to congratulate me while shooting curious glances at my seething father. Thomas avoided me entirely, while his wife Sarah, a thin woman with perpetually worried eyes, watched me with undisguised resentment. That evening, my parents invited me to dinner at their house. I should have recognized the ambush for what it was. "We need to discuss what's fair regarding Mom's inheritance," my father began before I'd even taken off my coat. "Fair would be respecting Grandma Eleanor's wishes," I replied, taking a seat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd done homework alone while they attended Thomas's games. "She wasn't in her right mind," my mother interjected. "She'd been confused lately." "The attorney said she was perfectly competent when she changed her will," I countered. "The point is," my father continued, "family resources should support the entire family. Thomas is struggling." "Thomas is always struggling," I interrupted. "That's nothing new." Sarah joined the conversation then. "We have 2 children to support, and the daycare business I started needs capital. Your brother has been working so hard to support us." This was news to me. Thomas has children? A business? Last I'd heard, the food truck had failed spectacularly when Thomas lost interest after 2 months. "Not yet, but we're trying," Sarah said, her hand protectively covering her still flat stomach. "And the business is in the planning stages." My father leaned forward. "We've already taken out loans against what we thought we'd receive from Mom's estate. We're counting on at least $250,000. The realization hit me hard. You took loans based on money you didn't have yet? Money that was never promised to you? "We didn't think Mom would play favorites," my father said bitterly. "Obviously, you got to her somehow." "I didn't get to her," I said, my voice rising. "I simply maintained a relationship with her. When's the last time you visited her without asking for money?" The argument escalated from there. My mother cried about family loyalty. Thomas finally emerged from another room to call me selfish and entitled. Sarah suggested I couldn't understand their struggles from my ivory tower in New York. My father delivered the final blow. "You've always been cold, Sophia. Even as a child. Is money really more important than your family's welfare?" I stood up, gathering my purse and coat. "This isn't about money. It's about respect, something I've never received from any of you." Grandma Eleanor saw me. She's the only one who ever did. I left with tears streaming down my face, but a newfound resolve. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was validation from the one family member who had believed in me. I would honor her gift by using it exactly as she'd intended, to build my empire. 2 days later, back in New York, I transferred the full inheritance into my investment account. It would become the seed money for my most ambitious project yet. In the months following Grandma Eleanor's inheritance, Mitchell Innovations expanded rapidly. I used the $500,000 as capital to launch a revolutionary investment fund specifically supporting women-led businesses in sustainable technology, combining my professional expertise with personal passion. We called it the Eleanor Fund in my grandmother's honor. The Eleanor Fund quickly gained attention for its innovative approach and impressive returns. Forbes featured it in an article about disruptive investment strategies, and suddenly I was fielding calls from venture capitalists who'd previously dismissed my ideas. Lily, now my chief operations officer, managed our growing team while I focused on strategic partnerships and fund development. We moved into larger offices in the financial district, complete with a view of the Brooklyn Bridge and a conference room where Grandma Eleanor's portrait hung prominently. 6 weeks after the Forbes article, Thomas showed up unannounced at my office. Lily intercepted him in the reception area, but his loud insistence on seeing my sister drew attention from everyone on the floor. "It's okay," I told Lily, after being alerted to the situation. "Send him in." Thomas had gained weight since the funeral, and his designer clothes couldn't quite hide the puffiness of someone who'd been drinking too much. Still, he managed his characteristic charming smile as he entered my office. "Nice place, sis," he said, whistling as he took in the view. "Really moved up in the world." "What do you want, Thomas?" I asked, remaining seated behind my desk. His smile faltered slightly. "Can't a brother visit his successful sister? We both know you've never visited me without wanting something." He dropped the pretense and the smile. "Fine. I've got a business opportunity. Premium craft breweries. It's a growing market with massive potential. I just need startup capital, and this concerns me how. I'm offering you first shot at investing. Family discount. $500,000 gets you in as a founding partner." The audacity was breathtaking. "Let me get this straight. You want me to invest the exact amount Grandma left me, which you and Dad were furious about, into your brewery idea? With no business plan, no market analysis, and no track record except a string of failed ventures? You haven't even heard the concept. I don't need to." The answer is no. Thomas's face darkened. "You really are as cold as Dad says. What happened to family loyalty?" "Loyalty goes both ways, Thomas. You've never shown me any." "Because you've always had everything so easy," he exploded. "Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life, Some of us have had to struggle. I stood up, anger finally breaking through my professional composure. Easy? You think my life was easy? I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you dropped out twice on mom and dad's dime. I built my career while being undermined by men like you who assumed I slept my way to the top. I made something of myself despite this family, not because of it. Well, la-di-da, aren't you special? He sneered. Enjoy your money and your lonely life. Some things can't be bought, Sophia. As security escorted him out, I sat shaking at my desk. Lily brought me a glass of water and closed my office door to give me privacy. Family, huh? She said quietly. Something like that, I replied. 2 weeks later, I was scheduled as the keynote speaker at the Women in Finance Summit, a prestigious industry event. As I walked onto the stage, I glanced at the audience and froze momentarily. My parents and Thomas were seated in the 3rd row. They had never attended any of my professional events. What were they doing here? Pushing aside my confusion, I delivered my speech on ethical investing and financial independence. The audience responded enthusiastically, particularly when I discussed the Eleanor Fund's mission of supporting overlooked entrepreneurs. After the presentation, I was approached by several potential investors, including Claire Winters, CEO of a major sustainable energy company. As we exchanged contact information, I noticed my father speaking with Jeremy Blackwell, one of my biggest clients. Excusing myself from Claire, I hurried over just in time to hear my father say, "Should know about her business practices. Family experience provides insights outsiders don't have." "Dad," I interrupted sharply. "What are you doing?" Jeremy looked uncomfortably between us. "Your father was just expressing some concerns about investment protocols at your firm. Something about unorthodox risk assessments?" My father smiled thinly. "Just looking out for potential investors. Wouldn't want anyone to be misled." I maintained my professional composure until Jeremy walked away, then pulled my father toward a quiet corner. "Are you trying to destroy my business?" "Just teaching you a lesson about family loyalty," he replied calmly. "You refuse to help your brother, so why should we support your success? By spreading lies to my clients?" "Not lies. Concerns. And Thomas has been making similar calls to others on your client list. Public records make it surprisingly easy to find out who you do business with." My mother and Thomas joined us, Thomas wearing a satisfied smirk. "You can still fix this," my mother said quietly. "Help your brother with his business. Be part of the family again." "This is your idea of family?" I asked incredulously. "Blackmail and sabotage?" "This is what happens when you turn your back on us," my father replied. Hotel security appeared. Then Lily had called them after noticing the confrontation. As my family was escorted from the premises, my father called back, "This isn't over, Sophia. We can make things very difficult for you." The damage control took weeks. Thomas had indeed contacted several clients, creating doubt about our investment strategies. My father had approached potential partners with insider warnings about my business ethics. They had even started rumors among industry contacts that my firm was under SEC investigation. Most disturbing was the discovery that Thomas had attempted to impersonate me in emails to investors, using a slightly modified address that at quick glance appeared to be mine. Fortunately, his poor writing skills and lack of financial knowledge made the deception obvious to most recipients. Legal action would have been justified, but it would also generate publicity that might further damage the firm's reputation. Instead, I focused on personally reassuring clients and strengthening relationships with partners who had remained loyal. Lily suggested hiring a PR firm to handle the aftermath, but I decided on a different approach. We're going to be so successful that their petty attempts to undermine us will look pathetic in retrospect. Living well isn't just the best revenge, it's the only one worth pursuing. I threw myself into expanding the Eleanor Fund with even greater determination. By the end of the year, our returns had outpaced market projections by 22%, and we'd helped launch 15 women-led businesses that traditional investors had overlooked. The attempted sabotage had failed, but the family wounds had deepened beyond repair. 5 years after the inheritance incident, Mitchell Innovations had grown into a formidable presence in the investment world. We now occupied 3 floors in a sleek Manhattan high-rise, employed a team of 35 financial experts, and managed over $2 billion in assets. The Eleanor Fund had expanded into 3 specialized divisions, each focusing on different aspects of sustainable technology and inclusive business practices. Forbes featured me in their 40 Under 40 issue, with a 4-page spread detailing my journey from middle-class Chicago to financial powerhouse. The article highlighted my innovative investment strategies and commitment to funding overlooked entrepreneurs, particularly women and minorities in tech. I kept a copy of the magazine on my coffee table but never sent one to my parents. After their sabotage attempt, our contact had dwindled to terse holiday cards and occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. Thomas had apparently launched and failed at 2 more businesses, a premium dog food delivery service, and a cryptocurrency startup before taking a middle management position at a beer distributor in Milwaukee. Despite professional success, my personal life remained carefully controlled. I dated occasionally but never allowed relationships to progress beyond a few months. My inner circle consisted of Lily, Rachel, now a successful surgeon in Boston, and James, my former mentor who had become a trusted friend and occasional advisor. "You've built an impressive empire," James remarked during a dinner, celebrating our latest fund launch. "But empires get lonely at the top. What's next for you, Sophia?" His question lingered in my mind for weeks. What was next? I had achieved financial independence, professional respect, and enough wealth to last several lifetimes. Yet something was missing, a sense of home, perhaps. My Manhattan penthouse was beautifully designed, but felt more like a showcase than a sanctuary. On a business trip to California that spring, I found myself driving along the coast near Malibu. A for sale sign caught my eye, a modernist glass and stone structure perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. On impulse, I called the listed number and arranged a viewing that afternoon. The moment I stepped into the villa, something shifted. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm patterns across hardwood floors. The sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below created a natural symphony. From every angle, the infinite blue of the ocean stretched to the horizon. "This is it," I whispered, standing on the main balcony as the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The villa was listed at $5.8 million, a significant investment even for me, but not beyond my means. By the end of the week, I had made an offer, and a month later, the coastal property was mine. The renovation process began immediately. I wanted to transform the already beautiful space into a perfect sanctuary. The master bedroom was positioned to capture both sunrise and sunset. The kitchen was redesigned for someone who actually enjoyed cooking, not just for show. The library, my favorite room, was fitted with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking a private cove. As the project neared completion, I found myself thinking about my family. Despite everything, a small part of me still yearned for reconciliation. Perhaps this new chapter, this creation of a true home, could offer an opportunity to heal old wounds. After much deliberation, I sent a handwritten invitation to my parents. I've purchased and renovated a home in Malibu. I'm hosting a small housewarming gathering on July 15th. I would appreciate your presence as I begin this new chapter. Sophia 2 weeks passed with no response. Finally, my mother called one evening as I was reviewing final design details with the interior decorator. "We got your invitation," she said without preamble. "And?" I asked, stepping away from the decorator for privacy. "Sophia, we don't need to see how you waste your money while family struggles. Your brother's oldest is starting school this fall, and they're barely making ends meet. Yet here you are buying mansions on the beach. I hadn't even known Thomas had children. No one had bothered to tell me I was an aunt." "It's not a waste," I said quietly. "It's my home, and you're my family. I thought you might want to share in this moment with me." Family shares more than just good moments, Sophia. They help each other through hard times. When was the last time you offered to help your brother? When was the last time any of you celebrated my success instead of resenting it? The silence stretched between us, filled with decades of disappointment. We won't be coming, she finally said. Your father says it would be hypocritical to celebrate excess while Thomas struggles to provide for his children. After hanging up, I received a text from Thomas. Nice of you to flaunt your mansion while my kids need braces and tutoring. Typical selfish Sophia. Enjoy your empty palace. Minutes later, my phone rang again, my mother, presumably to deliver another guilt trip. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a 5-minute monologue about my abandonment of family responsibilities and how my success had changed me for the worse. The rejection shouldn't have hurt after all these years, but it did. I canceled my meetings for the rest of the day and sat alone on the balcony, watching waves crash against the cliffs below. That evening, Rachel called for our weekly catch-up. They're not coming to the housewarming, I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. Their loss, Rachel replied firmly. But you know who should be there? Everyone who actually supported you along the way. What do you mean? I mean, throw the party anyway. Invite your real support system, the people who believed in you when your family didn't. Lily expressed similar sentiments when I called her with the news. Your family of choice is more important than your family of origin. We should be celebrating how far you've come despite them, not because of them. As the sting of rejection began to fade, a new plan took shape. My parents had refused to come to my housewarming, so I would invite everyone else. Colleagues who had supported my vision, clients who had trusted my judgment, friends who had believed in me when my own family didn't. My coastal villa would become a monument not to loneliness, but to resilience and chosen family. The invitations went out the next day, with one significant change to the guest list. The morning of my housewarming dawned with perfect California sunshine. Caterers arrived at 10, transforming my kitchen into a hive of activity. Florists followed, arranging spectacular displays of white lilies and blue hydrangeas throughout the villa. By noon, the transformation was complete. The house gleamed, the ocean sparkled beyond the windows, and everything was ready for the 4 o'clock gathering. I'd invited about 50 people, colleagues from Mitchell Innovations, industry friends, mentors like James, and close friends like Rachel and Lily. It was a carefully curated list of people who had supported me through various chapters of my journey. At 3:30, as I was putting final touches on my appearance, the doorbell rang. Assuming it was the bartender arriving early, I hurried downstairs in my robe, hair half-styled. Instead, I found my cousin Emma, standing on the doorstep, looking nervous and clutching a small gift bag. Emma? I hadn't seen her since Grandma Eleanor's funeral 5 years ago. We'd been close as children, but her family had moved to Oregon when we were teenagers, and contact had been minimal since. Surprise, she said with an uncertain smile. I hope it's okay that I'm early. My flight got in sooner than expected. I didn't even know you were coming, I said, genuinely confused. How did you? Your assistant Lily found me through social media. She said you were having a housewarming and thought I might want to attend. She glanced past me at the villa. This place is incredible, by the way. I made a mental note to thank, or possibly fire Lily for the unauthorized guest list addition. But seeing Emma brought back memories of summer afternoons, making mud pies in Grandma Eleanor's garden, long before family dynamics became complicated. Well, you're here now, I said, opening the door wider. Come in. You can help me finish getting ready. Over glasses of champagne in my dressing room, Emma filled me in on her life environmental law practice in Portland, recent divorce, 2 children now in middle school. Then she hesitantly broached the subject I'd been avoiding. So, Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane aren't coming? I focused on applying my lipstick. They declined the invitation. Emma's expression darkened. That's not surprising, given what they've been saying about you to the extended family. The lipstick paused halfway to my mouth. What have they been saying? Oh, Sophia. Emma looked genuinely pained. They've been telling everyone that you refuse to help the family financially, that you've become cold and selfish with your wealth. Uncle Robert told my dad that you wouldn't even contribute to a fund for Thomas's children's education. I didn't even know Thomas had children until recently. No one told me. That's not all, Emma continued, twisting her champagne glass nervously. Thomas has been claiming he's the real business genius behind your success, that he gave you the investment strategies that made your company profitable, but you cut him out. The absurdity of it might have been laughable if it hadn't been so hurtful. Thomas, who couldn't even keep a food truck business afloat for 3 months, claiming credit for my financial empire? Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Because it's wrong, Emma replied firmly. I've followed your career, Sophia. I've read every article about Mitchell Innovations. What you've built is extraordinary, and it's all you. The family narrative about you is falling apart as more people see the truth, and your parents know it. That's why they're lashing out harder. The doorbell rang again, saving me from having to respond. This time it was genuinely the bartender, followed shortly by the DJ, and then Lily, who arrived early to help coordinate. You invited my cousin? I whispered to Lily while Emma was chatting with the bartender about sustainable wine options. Lily looked unrepentant. You needed family here today, real family, who actually appreciates you. So I did some research. You overstepped, I said, but without real anger. Probably, she agreed cheerfully. But was I wrong? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was an elderly woman I didn't immediately recognize. Aunt Patricia? I finally placed her my mother's older sister, who I hadn't seen in at least 15 years. Look at you, she said, opening her arms for a hug. All grown up and successful. Your grandmother would be so proud. Patricia had been estranged from my mother for years over some ancient family dispute. I hadn't even sent her an invitation. Lily found me too, she explained, seeing my confusion. Said it was time someone from your mother's side of the family showed up for you. She's right. By 4 o'clock, my carefully planned gathering of 50 had swelled to nearly 70. Word had somehow spread through the extended family network, and relatives I barely remembered were arriving with warm hugs and enthusiastic compliments about the villa. Most surprising was the arrival of Jacob Peterson, Thomas's former business partner from the failed food truck venture. I hope you don't mind me crashing, he said after introducing himself. When I heard about this gathering, I felt I needed to come. How did you even hear about it? I asked, bewildered by the growing list of unexpected guests. Small world. My sister works with your cousin Emma. He handed me a folder. I also thought you should have this. Thomas has been trying to use your name to secure business loans. He's told several banks that you've verbally agreed to back his ventures. This is documentation from the 3 times I've had to set the record straight. The folder contained emails and legal notices showing that Thomas had indeed been claiming my financial backing for his latest scheme, an upscale sports bar concept, without my knowledge or consent. Why would you bring me this? I asked. Jacob shrugged. Professional courtesy. And honestly, what he did to you was similar to what he did to me with our business. Took credit for my ideas, then blamed me when things went south. Some people never take responsibility for their own failures. As the official party time arrived, my villa filled with a mix of professional colleagues, dear friends, and relatives I was just beginning to reconnect with. James arrived with his wife, immediately charming everyone with stories from my early career. Rachel flew in from Boston, bringing a spectacular piece of glass art that caught the sunset light perfectly. Clients I'd helped become successful entrepreneurs mingled with cousins I hadn't seen since childhood. Standing in the center of my great room, watching these disparate parts of my life blend together, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. These people, some related by blood, others by choice, formed a tapestry of connection, far stronger than the narrow definition of family my parents had always enforced. Aunt Patricia found me on the balcony during a moment of quiet reflection. Your mother was always jealous of you, you know, she said without preamble, joining me at the railing. Even when you were little. Jealous? Of what? Your intelligence. your drive. Diane wanted to be an investment banker when we were young, but our parents discouraged her, said it wasn't a suitable career for a woman. She settled for accounting and married your father right after college. Patricia sipped her wine. When you started showing interest in finance, history began repeating itself, except you refused to settle. Every success you achieved reminded her of what she gave up. The revelation shifted something in my understanding of my mother, not enough to excuse the years of favoritism and emotional neglect, but enough to see her as a complex, flawed human rather than simply a bad parent. And Thomas? I asked. Thomas is your father's mini-me, right down to the charming smile and inability to follow through. Robert sees himself in your brother, the good and the bad. It's easier to support someone who mirrors your own strengths and weaknesses than someone who outshines you. As the evening progressed, I moved from conversation to conversation, connecting with people who had played various roles in my journey. The mood was celebratory, the villa filled with laughter and warmth that had nothing to do with the price tag of the property and everything to do with the community gathered within its walls. Around 8 o'clock, Lily appeared at my elbow with an urgent expression. Security just called from the gate. Your parents and Thomas are outside, demanding to be let in. My heart raced as I processed Lily's words. My parents and Thomas here? After explicitly refusing the invitation? What do you want me to tell security? Lily asked, her expression concerned. Part of me wanted to turn them away, to let them feel the rejection they'd so often inflicted on me. But another part recognized that this confrontation was perhaps inevitable and necessary. Let them in, I said quietly. I'll meet them in the driveway. As I made my way to the front door, Aunt Patricia touched my arm. Want company? I shook my head. I need to do this alone, but thank you. The evening air had cooled as the sun set over the Pacific. My parents' rental car, a modest sedan, looked out of place among the luxury vehicles lining my circular driveway. My father stood rigidly beside it, my mother nervously adjusting her purse strap. Thomas leaned against the car, arms crossed defensively. I walked down the steps slowly, conscious that the large front windows made this confrontation visible to many of my guests. This is a surprise, I said when I reached them. I thought you weren't interested in seeing my wasteful home. We changed our minds, my father replied stiffly. Decided we should support you after all. My mother nodded, her eyes darting past me to the villa's illuminated interior. The place looks lovely, dear. Very impressive. The insincerity was palpable. Through the windows, I could see several wealthy guests mingling CEOs and investors whose combined net worth exceeded billions. What's really going on? I asked directly. You refused my invitation, called me selfish, and now you show up unannounced? Thomas stepped forward, his fake smile firmly in place. Family should stick together, right? Water under the bridge and all that. A flash of movement near the windows caught my attention. Jacob Peterson, Thomas's former business partner, was watching the scene with undisguised interest. Sudden clarity washed over me. You're not here for me. You're here to network, to find investors for whatever new scheme Thomas is planning. My mother's expression crumpled slightly, confirming my suspicion. We just thought it was time to put aside differences, my father insisted, but his eyes kept drifting toward the house. Let's be honest for once, I said tiredly. You've never been interested in my success, except for how it might benefit you. You didn't want to attend my housewarming, you wanted access to my guest list. Thomas dropped the pretense first. We're facing bankruptcy, okay? Dad's business is underwater, and my sports bar investors pulled out. We need connections. And you thought you'd find them here? After years of criticizing me, undermining my business, and spreading lies about me to our family? My father's face darkened. You've always been difficult, Sophia. So high and mighty with your fancy degrees and big city success. Would it kill you to help your family for once? I've offered help many times. You've only wanted it on your terms, with Thomas taking credit and me remaining invisible. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? Did you ever once come to a school event where I was being honored? Did you ever celebrate my accomplishments without immediately shifting attention to Thomas? Did you even tell me I was an aunt when Thomas had children? My voice had risen, and I noticed several guests had moved closer to the windows. Aunt Patricia and Emma had stepped onto the front porch, ready to intervene if needed. You were always so independent, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. You didn't seem to need us. Everyone needs their parents' approval, Mom. I just stopped expecting it. My father, sensing the situation slipping away, tried a new tactic. Look, we made mistakes. Parents aren't perfect. But we're family, doesn't that count for something? Family is earned, I replied, the words flowing from some deep, honest place within me. It's not just given by blood. Family shows up. Family celebrates your victories instead of resenting them. Family tells the truth. The truth? Thomas scoffed. The truth is, you got lucky while the rest of us struggled. You think you're so special. The truth, I interrupted firmly, is that I worked for everything I have while you expected things to be handed to you. The truth is that Mom and Dad encouraged that expectation for your entire life. My father's composure finally broke. You want the truth? Fine. I never thought you'd amount to anything. Girls weren't supposed to be good with money that was a man's domain. I figured you'd marry some executive and be a society wife. I never imagined you'd outshine me, outperform me in the one area I thought I understood. How do you think that feels? To have your daughter become what you failed to be? The raw honesty stunned all of us into momentary silence. In his unguarded moment, my father had finally revealed what had driven decades of favoritism and neglect his own insecurity, his fear of being outshone, his rigid ideas about gender roles. Dad, I said quietly, your failure wasn't in business. It was in being unable to celebrate your daughter's success because it highlighted your own limitations. That's the real tragedy here. Thomas stepped toward me aggressively. You think you're so much better than us. No, Thomas. I just refuse to be defined by other people's expectations, including yours and Dad's. Security appeared then, alerted by the escalating voices. Everything okay, Miss Mitchell? I took a deep breath, looking at my family, really looking at them perhaps for the first time. My father, older now, shoulders hunched under the weight of thwarted ambitions. My mother, tearful and conflicted, caught between loyalty to her husband and her daughter. Thomas, angry and entitled, unable to accept responsibility for his own choices. I felt a surprising emotion wash over me, not anger or resentment, but pity and a kind of liberation. They were imprisoned by their own narratives, while I had broken free. Please escort them off the property, I said to security, my voice steady. They weren't invited after all. This proves everything we've said about you, Thomas called as they were led away. Cold, selfish, unforgiving. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. As their car disappeared down the driveway, I turned to find Emma, Aunt Patricia, and several other relatives standing on the porch, having witnessed everything. Are you okay? Emma asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Actually, yes, I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. I think I finally am. We walked back inside together, where Lily had diplomatically increased the music volume to cover the confrontation. Rachel immediately appeared at my side with a fresh glass of champagne. That looked intense, she said. It was. My father finally told the truth after 34 years. And it wasn't about me at all. It never was. The party continued, perhaps even more vibrant than before. What should have been a mortifying scene had instead felt cleansing the lancing of a wound that had festered for decades. The ocean waves crashed against the cliffs below my villa, their rhythms steady and eternal, washing away the past with each retreat. Later that night, after the last guests had departed, I stood on my balcony, looking at the moonlight on the water. For the first time in my life, I felt truly at home, not in the physical structure, magnificent as it was, but in myself. My parents had refused to come to my housewarming, so I had invited everyone else. In doing so, I had discovered that everyone else included a family I hadn't fully recognized until now, one built on mutual respect, genuine connection, and celebration of each other's successes. It wasn't the family I was born into. It was the family I had chosen. And finally, at 34, that felt like more than enough. The morning after the housewarming, I woke to the sound of waves and seagulls. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows, casting warm patterns across the floor. For a moment, I simply lay there, absorbing the peace that seemed to have settled into my bones after last night's confrontation. The villa was quiet but not empty. Rachel and Lily had stayed over, occupying guest rooms on the opposite wing. Aunt Patricia had also remained, saying at her age she didn't do late-night drives back to hotels. Emma had left reluctantly, promising to return soon with her children. I pulled on a silk robe and made my way to the kitchen, where I found Lily already brewing coffee and Rachel arranging fresh fruit on the counter. "Morning, homeowner," Rachel greeted me with a smile. "How does it feel the day after?" "Surprisingly good," I admitted, accepting the coffee Lily handed me. "Like something heavy has been lifted." "Family confrontations will do that," Lily said knowingly. "Either crush you completely or set you free." We carried our breakfast out to the main balcony, where Aunt Patricia was already seated, looking out at the ocean. "I called your mother this morning," she announced without preamble. I nearly choked on my coffee. "You what?" We hadn't spoken in 15 years before yesterday. Seemed like a good time to break the silence. She adjusted her reading glasses. "I told her she'd made a terrible mistake with you, and an even worse one last night." "What did she say?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. "Not much. Mostly listened." Diane was always a good listener when she wasn't under Robert's influence. Patricia stirred her tea thoughtfully. "I told her about some of our family patterns, how our father treated me differently than her because I was too outspoken while she was the good daughter. How that affected both our lives. The parallel to my own situation with Thomas was unmistakable." "Do you think she understood?" "Understanding and acting are different things, dear. But seeds were planted." She patted my hand. "Don't expect too much too soon. Generational patterns are stubborn things." After breakfast, Rachel and I walked along the private beach below the villa. The tide had retreated, leaving wet sand perfect for barefoot strolling. "I'm thinking of moving to California," she announced suddenly. "UCLA Medical Center has been recruiting me for their cardiac surgery department." "What? That's huge, Rachel. Why didn't you say anything last night?" She shrugged. "It was your night. Besides, I'm still deciding." "Well, selfishly, I'd love to have you nearby," I admitted. "New York doesn't feel like home without you there." "New York was never really home for either of us," she said gently. "We were both running from something there. Maybe it's time to run towards something instead." Her words resonated as we continued walking. What was I running toward? The empire I'd built had been partly motivated by proving my worth to a family that couldn't see it. Now that I'd finally confronted that truth, what did I actually want? Back at the villa, Emma called to check in, putting her children on speakerphone to say hello to their cool cousin Sophia with the ocean house. Their innocent excitement about visiting in the summer made me laugh and think about the future in a way I hadn't before. Later that afternoon, as Rachel and Lily prepared to leave, we made plans for the coming months. Lily would oversee the New York office while I spent more time in California, establishing a West Coast presence for Mitchell Innovations. Rachel would visit regularly while exploring the UCLA opportunity. We talked about weekend trips to wine country, hiking in Big Sur, and transforming the villa into a gathering place for our chosen family. "What about the Eleanor Fund?" Lily asked as we finalized our plans. "Any new directions there?" An idea that had been forming since the confrontation suddenly crystallized. "Actually, yes. I want to establish a foundation for young women from unsupportive families who want to pursue careers in finance. Scholarships, mentoring programs, internships, a complete support system. Turning your pain into purpose," Rachel nodded approvingly. "Grandma Eleanor would love that." After they departed, the villa felt quieter but not lonely. Aunt Patricia remained for a few more days, sharing family stories I'd never heard about my grandmother's secret ambitions to travel the world, about my mother's early talent for mathematics, about family dynamics that long predated my birth. "Your grandmother left you more than money, you know," she told me one evening as we sat watching the sunset. "She left you her spirit." "What do you mean?" Patricia disappeared into her guest room, returning with a worn envelope. "She asked me to give you this if you ever truly came into your own. I think now is the time." The letter inside was written in Grandma Eleanor's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Sophia, asterisk. If you're reading this, it means two things. I am gone, and you have become the woman I always knew you could be. The money I've left you is practical, but this letter contains the real inheritance truth. Asterisk. Asterisk. I recognized myself in you from the time you were small. The same curiosity, the same determination, the same refusal to be limited by others' expectations. These qualities will likely have caused you pain within our family. Robert never understood them in me, and I suspect he struggles with them in you as well. Asterisk. Asterisk. Please know that any rejection you've experienced is not a reflection of your worth, but of others' limitations. Some people can only see as far as their own horizons. You were born to see beyond. Asterisk. Asterisk. Build your life with intention, Sophia. Create beauty. Pursue purpose. Choose your family, blood, or otherwise based on mutual respect and celebration of each other's unique gifts. And whenever possible, use your success to hold the door open for others who share your spirit but lack your opportunities. Asterisk. Asterisk. With endless pride and love. Asterisk. Grandma Eleanor. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. Somehow, years before, she had predicted exactly what I would need to hear at this moment. The weeks that followed brought unexpected developments. Emma moved to Los Angeles for a new position with an environmental law firm, bringing our families closer. Lily started spending half her time in California, overseeing our new West Coast office. Rachel accepted the position at UCLA, purchasing a house just 30 minutes from my villa. Thomas sent a terse email apologizing for his behavior at the housewarming, likely at Sarah's insistence, given the formal tone and lack of genuine remorse. I responded politely but maintained boundaries. My father remained silent, but my mother began sending cautious text messages, simple things at first, like articles about finance she thought might interest me, then gradually more personal notes. I neither encouraged nor discouraged this tentative reconnection. The door remained open for genuine reconciliation, but I no longer needed their approval to feel complete. 6 months after the housewarming, I hosted another gathering at the villa, smaller, more intimate, a dinner for my chosen family. Lily brought her new boyfriend. Rachel brought stories from her surgical residency. Emma brought her children, who spent the afternoon building sandcastles on the beach below. As we gathered around the dining table laughing, sharing stories, creating new memories, I looked around at these people who had chosen to be in my life, and whom I had chosen in return. The validation I had sought for so long from my parents had been right here all along, in the authentic connections I'd built outside my family of origin. My coastal villa had become what I'd always hoped, not just an impressive address or a symbol of success, but a true home filled with genuine love and acceptance. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood alone on the balcony watching moonlight dance across the waves. My parents had refused to come to my housewarming, a rejection that had initially hurt deeply. But in their absence, I had found something more valuable, the freedom to define family on my own terms. Sometimes the greatest gifts arrive disguised as rejections. Sometimes the empty spaces create room for unexpected blessings. And sometimes the family you choose becomes more significant than the family you were born into. Looking out at the vast ocean, I felt profound gratitude for the journey, every painful rejection, every hard-won success, every lesson learned along the way. They had all led me here, to this moment of peace and belonging. And that, I realized, was the ultimate achievement, far more valuable than any oceanfront property or financial empire. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to create your own definition of family? What helped you move past rejection from those who should have supported you? Drop your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Your support means the world to me, and I'm grateful to have this amazing community to share these stories with. Until next time, remember that sometimes the family we choose becomes our greatest blessing. Thank you for listening, and may you find peace and belonging wherever you call home.